but I mean, he could have done more to stop it. Like, he could have tried to play like f6 and then e5 himself, and then it's kind of hard for you to stop e4 because you have no f pawn. So usually you could like play f3, but since your f pawn would be on g3, like it's harder to stop that move. And if he can break through like that in the center, it's hard for you to gain an advantage. So that's the only thing. So yeah, you have to kind of be careful.
Move at that point instead of h3?
Yeah, so instead of h3 again, if you just take on d5 and queen b3, like I said, I think you just win a pawn. I mean, you could also just castle. Like if that didn't happen to win a pawn, you could just castle, I think, and that would be fine as well. Because I mean, even if he plays knight takes g3 and you play h takes g3, you're not really going to use that h file necessarily to mate him. I mean, he's too solid there. So I think castling would have been fine. Even something like queen c2 would have been okay. I mean, like I said, if queen b3 wasn't like a great move, you could just play queen c2, and then you don't have to worry about him taking those pieces. Because I mean, your idea eventually is you want to play e4 to kind of break open the center with your rooks on d1 and e1. So anything that helps support that plan is probably a good idea. So castling, moving your queen out, anything, but just let him take on g3 first before you decide what to do, because allowing him to play knight takes g3 and forcing you to play f takes g3 is probably like exactly what he wanted. So okay, so h3 take. So he played bishop c8, so he realized that pawn was weak. And also, if he moved it anywhere else, you could have either won a pawn or it would have been awkward. So you castled, which was good. You played queen e6, attacking the pawn. So I thought here you could just play maybe king to h2. What did you end up playing? Queen e1, right? Yeah. So
I didn't like the pin.
Yeah, you didn't like the pin. I understand that. But I didn't see a way for him to exploit it readily, and I'm not exactly sure that your queen wants to be on e1, because there it's kind of fulfilling a defensive role. Whereas, like I said before, I'd prefer on b3 or c2, something that supports e4. And the only reason I don't like e1 is because your rooks are still not connected, so I'd prefer to get a rook on e1. I'd prefer to play something like queen e2 at some point. So king h2, he makes a move, you play queen e2 or queen c2, and then rook a e1, and then e4. But yeah, I can see how you'd be worried about the pin. But you could even try something like g4. And I know your dark squares might look weak, but
yeah, I don't know. I didn't like
yeah,
that
I know. But I mean, his bishop is on the wrong diagonal to really exploit that. So as long as you take care to stop, e5 ideas, I think you should be okay there. But this
h2, it looks scary, but I think it's actually a pretty good shelter right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Just h2.
Yeah. Okay, so queen e1's okay. So he took, and then queen b4. And you played a good move, bishop b3, that was good. So you recognized that he was forking your bishop and your pawn, so that was good. And you kept that bishop on the nice diagonal, so I thought that was a good move. He played knight d7, you played knight g5, which I thought, again, was another good move, because now you're on f7 3 times. And so I thought he had to play knight f6 here, but he played bishop f6, which is a little more awkward, because now you found another good move, which was knight ce4. So I was saying on the stream that I was hoping you would play knight ce4, because now you're threatening the queen and you're threatening the bishop as well. And if you remove that bishop off the board, you should be good, because one of the advantages he has in this position is the fact that he has 2 bishops, and especially that f6 bishop with your pawns all in dark, they could become targets. So if you were to eliminate that bishop, you should be substantially improve position. So I was really happy he played e4. And then he took the queen, you played rook a takes e1, which is another good move, because you wanted to keep your rook on the f-file, which makes sense. And you played king g7, and you played rook f2, which I actually, before you played rook f2, I actually wasn't sure what you should do. But after you played rook f2, I really liked that move, because now you're preparing to double your rooks either on the f-file or maybe anticipating you're going to open the d-file with like d5, and you can double on the d-file, or maybe you can double on the c-file. But in either case, now your rooks are free to double on one of the files. So I really liked rook f2 too. So he played h6, you played knight f3, which I thought was another good move. And now he played e5, which was a bad move, because you correctly realized that you were able to take a free pawn. So at this, the last 5 moves, I thought you played absolutely fabulously. And after knight takes bishop, knight takes pawn, that was perfect. Now you're just winning a pawn. And after knight e4, rook takes f7 was another great move. Okay, so up until this point, I thought you played very well. And
I know where some of the mistakes were definitely from this point out.
Okay, but
Oh,
you have
actually
to, you
that
have to.
one.
This is a key point because I was saying in the stream that um, like one of the most important things you need to learn how to do is when you're up material to learn how to stifle counterplay. So
I
okay,
know. I
so
always screw up that part. I could like win material and then screw it up.
yeah, exactly. Because you kind of get relaxed a little bit. You kind of think, oh, I can just do stuff and it's not going to be a big deal. But as you learned, he had some threats that he was able to create uh, that are kind of tough to see. So, okay, so the first thing I would have said here is you took this with the knight. I would have preferred to take with the bishop, simply because you're also threatening to take on g6 now.
Oh, that's true.
And I think your knight is fabulous on e5. I don't know why you'd ever want to move it. Like, your knight is
Yeah,
perfect
when
on e5, right?
once my knight was there, it I didn't like it there.
You
It
didn't like it
wasn't
on
it was
f7, or you
defended
didn't
by the
like it on
bishop.
e5?
I don't know. Just didn't like it.
You didn't like his knight or your knight?
My knight, I didn't like it on
Oh,
f7.
yeah,
Like when
well, that's what I'm saying. So that's why I thought you should have taken with the bishop.
yeah, that's actually and I'm on that pawn, so yeah, that's another good point.
Yeah, so bishop takes f7 I thought was better. But, I mean, knight takes f7 was not a big deal. I'll tell you what was a big deal. Uh, okay, hold on one second. Okay, so you played knight takes f7. Okay, he played knight takes g3. Okay, so here is where you start to make like second and third best moves. So okay, after knight takes g3, I thought you should play e4 immediately. So it was kind of a
I
problem in the game
okay.
that he played knight e4, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So if you play e4, not only are you basically just threatening e5, e6, e7, e8, but I mean that's actually your main threat. But more importantly, you're not giving his knight a chance to hop back. Uh, so I thought you'd play e4 immediately there, because I mean your knight's not in any danger. So what did you played knight d6, right? Yeah. So I mean your knight's not being threatened right there. So there's no reason to move it yet. First you have to take care of his knight. So I thought e4 would have been a good try by you. But knight d6 was okay. But like I said, like e4 I think would have been a little bit stronger. So I think knight d6 was like a second best move. So now he played rook b8, which was a bad move. So again, now your knight d6 knight is controlling e4. So I thought you'd play king to h2. So the reason I'd prefer king h2 over king f2 is the fact that now I can use the f file for my rook. So after like say king h2, he has to play knight h5, and then you play rook f1. Now
Uh,
you're threatening like rook f7 check, and that's almost winning, right? Like he has to play king h8, and then you play rook f8 check, and you win the bishop. So you actually have a very concrete threat, and I don't even see how he stops it, to be honest. He has to play something like knight f6, and then you can play e4 with the threat of e5, and then that just wins by force. Um, so yeah, so you should have realized that your king was uh, that your king might have been blocking your rook by playing king f2. So king h2 was, I think, a slightly more accurate move. So king f2, he played knight f5. Okay, so here again, I thought you had something better. You played what? You took the bishop, right? Okay, so
yeah.
one thing you could have done is simply to take the knight, and then he takes with the bishop probably, and then play e4,
E4.
and then just play
Yeah.
e5, and then just play that rook and bishop ending up a pawn. And your king is better than his king, your bishop is better than his bishop, and your rook is better than his rook. So there's no way you should lose that. And it's very unlikely that you draw it even, because it's same colored bishops, you're up a clear pawn, and your pawn is a pass pawn to boot. I mean, your e-pawn is passed, so he can't really stop it. A second thing I thought you could have done was, okay, even after knight takes bishop, I thought that was okay, but you could have now played, instead of g4, you could have played bishop to e6, forking the rook and knight, and then trading into a rook ending. And I think even the rook ending is pretty simple for you to win, simply because your e-pawn is passed. So his rook will have to be passively defending against your e-pawn, and your rook is already nicely behind the e-pawn, so you can just simply push it. And your king should be able to get a better position than his king. So I thought that was another thing you could have tried. Because actually his knight is going to start creating threats that are going to be tough to meet eventually.
Yeah.
So, just simplification. Like, I mean, okay, at worst, if you draw that, okay, you draw it. But you can't lose that rook ending 6 versus 5. Like, there's no way you can lose it. I mean, if you play semi-competently, there's no way you can lose it. Whereas, if you let his knight on the board, like, you do give him chances for victory. And I think it's harder for you to even win when his knight's on the board. So bishop e6 I thought made more sense as well. But you wanted to chase his knight, which is understandable. But again, I think it's like a second or third best move. So knight d6. Okay, so now was the key point. Now was the key point. Okay, now you have to play e4. Because if you let his knight into e4, it's almost impossible for you to break that blockade without incurring some sort of positional deficiency. So yeah, now is the key point where you really had to play e4. So you played what, king g3? Yeah. So letting his knight into e4 was definitely not something you should have allowed.
I don't even know why I played G2
King g3, you mean?
or G3. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think you were trying to get to f4 and e5, but I mean, you have to realize that his pieces were going to start coming alive. So after rook e8, and then you played king f3, and then he played knight b5. Okay, so now you have to realize he's threatening his knight takes d4. So you probably have to play rook to d1. So your new plan should have been like rook d1, and then just playing like d5, and then rook takes d5, and then trying to get on the 7th rank with your rook, like rook d7, and then trying to win his pawns. Meanwhile, trying to just keep pushing your passed pawn on e3. So you never really got your passed pawn going, which was your main trump card, because that's the pawn you were ahead. And then after you missed that knight takes d4, yeah, I mean, here now it's pretty much over because you're down the exchange.
I don't even know why I took. Oh wait, no.
Yeah, you have to take because it's a fork. That's the problem. So a4 is actually one of the worst moves you can make because it undefended your b3 bishop. So
yeah.
You to take.
Oh man.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, you played I think very well for the first like 18, 19 moves, and then you started making second best moves, third best moves, and then a4 was like the worst move, and then just that one move kind of killed you. But to be honest, I thought you played better than him, so I thought you deserved to win. But you have to be careful when you're ahead about the counterplay. So it's instructive that you need to learn how to kind of stifle the counterplay before you kind of go with your own ideas. So does that make sense?
Yeah, the things that I was thinking about, especially in the end, was like I wanted to keep my bishop because I thought it'd be better than his knight.
Right.
It didn't really turn out, and then like king to f2, I was just trying to get closer.
Right.
It's a good thing, but obviously it's better on h2.
Yeah.
The file is better for my rook, so.
Yeah, because I mean, actually, I think after king h2, I think you almost have a forced win there because it's almost impossible for him to stop rook f7 because his bishop was undeveloped and his rook was undeveloped. So just like little nuances like that. I mean, like objectively, if you took those other factors out of position, probably king f2 was better because your king is closer to the center. But the tactically king h2 is better because it allowed your rook to get on the f file. So yeah, you just have to notice things like that. And I know part of the reason that you might have played king f2 is that you were low on time because you spent so much time in the opening.
I did. I think. Just a little bit, like, because I was trying to give a little commentary and stuff.
No, I understand. I completely understand because it was your first time.
Because I realized when I was like at 6 minutes, I was like, oh my god, I'm so low on time already. Usually I move a little faster, but
no, I noticed. No, I mean, I don't blame you for being low on time because it's hard to give commentary and to play at the same time. But I also think part of it was because you were somewhat unfamiliar with the opening. So as you get more familiar with those types of positions, you'll start to realize, that queen b3 idea. You'll start to realize the, just castling and trying to play for e4 and stuff like that. Because I think you were a little too worried about what he was doing, and he really wasn't threatening too much, so you didn't have to worry that much about it. So I think you were a little too cautious in the opening, and then you were a little too haphazard in the middle game and the end game. So if you can reverse that, then it probably work out better for you.
Well, the good thing is, like, I just, like, it was invisible. I don't know, but it just makes sense, so I think I could see it for next time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, but I mean, I thought you played the middle part of the game exceptionally well. Like, I mean, you took advantage of the one or two mistakes he made, and you won a pawn, and you had a great position. Like, I mean, you were up a pawn and you were up in position, but just because you're up a pawn, you're up in position doesn't necessarily mean the game is won right away. So you kind of have to be extra careful then.
Oh yeah.
So I think you've learned that for next time. So yeah, thanks so much for doing this. Hope you learned something.
Yeah, it was lots of fun.